win every quarter. This was a steady beatdown from start to finish. Every quarter, we build a lead, we add more, we add more, we add more, and the next thing you know, you look up and the Indiana Fever have a lead of 25 points. Chicago Sky suck. We need to beat the teams we're supposed to beat. And the Chicago Sky are one of those teams.
Okay, now let's get into rumor territory. Nothing is officially confirmed, but the online chatter is too loud to ignore. Angel Reese has now missed 5 consecutive games, and the timing of her latest disappearance during the biggest rivalry matchup of the season is raising serious questions about what's really happening inside the Chicago Sky organization. What you just heard isn't just analysis, it's the brutal truth about where this rivalry stands right now. Chicago's guys suck, and Angel Reese's mysterious absence pattern is exposing something much deeper than a simple back injury. I'm Jackson Riley, and I've been filtering through the noise, connecting the digital breadcrumbs, and the signals point to an organizational meltdown that goes far beyond what the mainstream sports media wants to admit. Here's what the other channels won't tell you. This isn't just about one player missing games. This is about a pattern of behavior, questionable timing, and a franchise that's systematically falling apart while their biggest rival builds something unstoppable. By the end of this investigation, you'll understand why Angel Reese's absence might be the symptom of a much larger disease eating away at the Chicago Sky. If you're ready to go behind the headlines and see what's really happening in this supposed rivalry, hit that subscribe button now, because what I'm about to reveal about the timing, the explanations, and the social media signals will change how you see this entire situation. Let me walk you through exactly what we know, what we suspect, and why the temperature of the online conversation suggests something much bigger is brewing in Chicago. We're talking about franchise-altering dysfunction disguised as injury management, and Angel Reese is either a victim of it or a willing participant. Let's start with the facts before we dive into the speculation. Angel Reese has now missed 5 consecutive games for the Chicago Sky, with the official explanation shifting between back injury, illness, and what coach Tyler Marsh now calls stepping away to focus on rehab. But here's what's interesting about the timeline. She was healthy enough to participate in all-star activities in Indianapolis just weeks ago. Healthy enough to appear in promotional events, healthy enough to engage with fans, healthy enough to handle the physical demands of All-Star Weekend. But when it came time for the actual game against Indiana, in the same city where she was perfectly fine during All-Star festivities, suddenly she couldn't travel. The temperature of the online conversation suggests something deeper is happening here. Reddit's WNBA community has been dissecting this timeline, and the pattern looks suspicious when you lay it out chronologically. Official sources won't tell you this, but if you follow the digital breadcrumbs, a different picture emerges. Coach Tyler Marsh's explanations have evolved in real time. First, it was a back injury, then it became an illness. Now it's stepping away for rehab with no concrete timeline for return. That's not how legitimate medical situations typically unfold in professional sports. When organizations start changing their story, that's when you know something else is happening. But the story doesn't end there. Let's talk about what makes this absence particularly damaging to Chicago's credibility. This wasn't just any game, this was the biggest rivalry matchup of the season. Indiana versus Chicago, with all the social media narratives, all the fan investment, all the playoff implications on the line. And Angel Reese, who has built her brand on being competitive, on talking trash, on never backing down from confrontation, decides this is the moment to prioritize rehab. The timing doesn't just look bad, it looks calculated. I've been reading the signals from the online basketball community, and the consensus is clear. This feels like a pattern. Remember when Reese left LSU mid-season during her sophomore year? Remember the questions about her commitment when things got tough? The social media speculation is connecting those dots, and it's not painting a favorable picture. Here's what they missed in the mainstream coverage. Angel Reese has now established a reputation for disappearing when her teams need her most. Whether it's transferring from Maryland to LSU, leaving LSU when the pressure mounted, or now missing crucial games for Chicago, the pattern suggests someone who struggles with adversity. If you're seeing the same pattern I'm seeing, drop a comment below with pattern exposed and let me know what you think about this timing. The community analysis on this has been incredible. Now let's pull the thread on what this really reveals about the Chicago Sky as an organization. When your supposed superstar can simply decide not to show up for the biggest games of the season, that tells you everything about the culture, the accountability, and the leadership structure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm proud of this group. I think we've shown all season long, like, they're resilient, they're connected, you know, they pull for each other, they enjoy one another, they celebrate one another, and, you know, that stuff alone is good for 10 to 12 points a game. And, you know, for this group, the way that they share the ball, how unselfish they are, I mean, I'm really proud of them. It's not been ideal circumstances all season long, but they've shown the character of who they are. They've been resilient, they've responded to adversity, and they continue to elevate one another. And, you know, I couldn't be more proud of this group than I am at this moment.
Compare that to what you just heard from Indiana's locker room. That's what organizational culture sounds like when it's built on quality human beings and character-first decision-making. Chicago doesn't have that foundation, and Angel Reese's absence pattern is the symptom of a much deeper problem. The contrast couldn't be more stark. While Indiana's coach talks about resilience, connection, and players pulling for each other, Chicago's coach is making excuses for a player who won't even travel with the team. That's not a medical issue, that's a cultural problem. I've been filtering through the social media conversations, and the Chicago Sky's reputation among players isn't the best. Multiple sources suggest that roster construction decisions, coaching stability, and front office management have created an environment where star players feel comfortable simply opting out when things get difficult. But here's what the mainstream media won't investigate. The digital temperature around Angel Reese's absence has been building for weeks. YouTube content creators have been releasing videos with titles like Angel Reese humiliated after quitting Chicago Sky, and the engagement numbers suggest fans are ready to believe this narrative. The Reddit analysis has been particularly damaging. Top comments include observations like, "This was a coaching disaster class for Tyler," and questions about whether Reese actually wants to be in Chicago at all. When your own fan base starts questioning your commitment, that's when you know the narrative has shifted permanently. Okay, now let's get into rumor territory. Nothing is officially confirmed, but the online chatter is too loud to ignore. The speculation centers around Angel Reese's comfort level with losing, her willingness to face adversity, and whether she's actually committed to building something in Chicago or just collecting paychecks while avoiding accountability. The temperature of this conversation is getting hot fast. If you want to stay ahead of where this story is heading, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because this situation is developing rapidly. Let's talk about what this absence really cost Chicago in terms of competitive credibility. Indiana didn't just win this game, they demolished Chicago 92-70 while missing their own superstar in Caitlin Clark. They proved that depth, character, and organizational culture matter more than individual talent when that talent doesn't show up.
You did a really, really good job, and that's something that we're going to have to continue to utilize, right? We did a great job. 11 offensive rebounds. We outscored them on second chance points. 21 assists on 33 made field goals. Y'all, shot distribution was really good. Just overall, like, strong team effort. We've talked about it all year. We're resilient and we're deep, and both of those things allow us to do some things that other people might not think we can, right? We are bigger, we are greater than the me. Yep, no doubt about it.
Listen to that statistical dominance. 11 offensive rebounds, 21 assists on 33 makes. That's what happens when an organization builds depth through character rather than hoping individual talent will solve cultural problems. Chicago had their supposed superstar healthy and available for most of the season, and they still can't compete with Indiana's bench players. The rivalry isn't even competitive anymore. Indiana holds a 7-1 record over Chicago across 2 seasons, and they just swept all 4 matchups in 2025. This isn't about talent, it's about one organization that builds winners and another organization that collects talent without developing character. While Angel Reese was missing in action, Aaliyah Boston was making history. She moved into 3rd all-time in Fever franchise blocks, passing Kelly Schumacher and trailing only Tamika Catchings and Tammy Sutton-Brown. But here's what makes it even more devastating for Chicago. She achieved this milestone by dominating her former South Carolina teammate, Camila Cardoso.
Aaliyah Boston, she remembers the days at South Carolina. The practices at South Carolina, beating up on good old Camila Cardoso. She sees Camila Cardoso and she says, oh, this is food. This is a player, this is a matchup I can continue to be aggressive on. This is a player that no matter how good Camila may be or may not be, I will always be able to own her. And own her she did. Own her she.
That psychological warfare angle is what the other channels missed completely. Boston sees Cardoso and says this is food because she knows she owns that matchup. She's been dominating Cardoso since their college days, and nothing about the professional level changes that dynamic. Boston's paint presence forced Chicago into awkward mid-range shots because they were tired of getting sent away at the rim. That's elite-level impact that changes how the opposing team even attempts to score. Meanwhile, Angel Reese is at home, presumably focusing on rehab instead of supporting her teammates in the biggest game of their season. The difference in organizational philosophy couldn't be more obvious when you compare the two franchises' approaches to adversity. While Chicago makes excuses for absent players, Indiana builds depth through character-first roster construction. Quality human beings, selfless human beings. That's how championship organizations think about roster construction.
I think it just says a lot about who we have as human beings. That was one of the things that we made a priority in the offseason of, who we bring into this organization. Number one, quality human beings, selfless human beings that want to pull for one another, that understand. We have this depth for a reason, and sometimes it creates challenges getting people on the floor, but in situations like this is why you have it. And I'm just, she's right. I mean, as a pro and as a pro coach, this is one of the most connected groups.
Chicago is collecting talent and hoping chemistry develops naturally. Indiana is selecting character and building sustainable success through human connection. This isn't just about basketball strategy. This is about understanding that professional sports is ultimately about people, and people with character show up when their teams need them most. Angel Reese's absence pattern suggests she doesn't understand that fundamental principle. This character contrast is exactly why Indiana keeps embarrassing Chicago. If you're starting to see why this rivalry isn't even competitive anymore, let me know in the comments. While Chicago dealt with their superstars' mysterious absence, Indiana's role players stepped into starring roles and delivered historic performances. Lexi Hull reached her 100th career steal while dropping a season-high 17 points. Kelsey Mitchell took over as the WNBA's leading scorer while running point guard duties. Michaela Timpson grabbed a career high in rebounds in just 7 minutes.
That final three-pointer kind of felt like the perfect end of that night. Just if you could just talk to me about the celebration, how much of a relief that was for you, just kind of to punctuate it like that.
I mean, it's fun. The crowd was behind us today. It's fun to walk out of the gym on a high note and on a make. And I saw the time going down, so I was trying to pull out my inner Kelsey Mitchell.
Listen to that authentic excitement. I was trying to pull on my inner Kelsey Mitchell. That's what team chemistry sounds like when players genuinely support each other's success. You don't hear that kind of authentic celebration in Chicago because they don't have that foundation of mutual respect and shared sacrifice. The role player celebration content represents an emerging trend that Chicago can't participate in because their culture doesn't support it. When your supposed superstar won't even travel with the team, how can role players feel valued or supported? The organizational dysfunction flows downward and affects every level of performance. Here's what my investigation reveals about the broader implications. Angel Reese's absence pattern isn't just about missed games. It's about a franchise that can't hold its stars accountable, can't build sustainable culture, and can't compete with organizations that prioritize character over talent collection. The social media signals suggest this story isn't going away. Fan engagement around Reese's commitment questions continues growing, and the narrative is shifting from injury sympathy to accountability demands. When fans start questioning whether their star player actually wants to be there, that's when franchises face existential problems. Official sources won't tell you this, but if you follow the digital breadcrumbs, the pattern suggests Chicago's problems run much deeper than Angel Reese's individual choices. This is about systemic dysfunction, cultural weakness, and organizational failure to establish standards that apply to everyone regardless of talent level. Let's talk about where this investigation leads us in terms of predictions and future developments. Chicago's inability to hold Angel Reese accountable for her absence pattern establishes a precedent that will affect every future personnel decision. You can't build championship culture when your stars operate under different rules than everyone else. The contrast with Indiana becomes more stark every game. While Chicago makes excuses, Indiana builds depth. While Chicago's stars disappear during big moments, Indiana's role players step up and deliver historic performances. While Chicago's coach changes his explanation for player absences, Indiana's coach quantifies team chemistry as 10 to 12 points a game worth of competitive advantage. The temperature of the online conversation suggests fans are losing patience with the excuse-making. Reddit analysis shows growing criticism of Chicago's coaching, roster construction, and player accountability. That fan sentiment translates into pressure on the front office to make organizational changes. The trajectory of this franchise is becoming clearer every game. If you want to stay ahead of the organizational changes coming to Chicago, make sure you're following for all the latest intelligence. So what's fact and what's speculation? Let's break it down systematically. The facts are undeniable. Angel Reese has missed 5 consecutive games with changing explanations, chose not to travel for the biggest rivalry game while being healthy enough for all-star activities, and established a pattern of absence during crucial moments throughout her career. The speculation centers around her motivation, her commitment to Chicago, and whether this absence represents individual choice or organizational dysfunction. But when you analyze the digital breadcrumbs, the signals point toward a franchise that can't establish accountability standards for its star players. The investigative conclusion is clear: this isn't about injury management. This is about a cultural problem that makes Chicago uncompetitive against organizations that prioritize character over talent collection. Angel Reese's absence is the symptom, not the disease. Here's what this means for the broader WNBA landscape and playoff implications. Indiana's depth performance without Caitlin Clark establishes them as legitimate championship contenders regardless of individual player availability. They've proven that organizational culture creates sustainable competitive advantage. Chicago's reliance on individual talent without cultural foundation makes them vulnerable to exactly this type of situation. When your stars can simply choose not to participate in crucial games, you can't build the consistency required for championship-level success. The competitive gap continues widening because one organization builds through character while the other collects talent without accountability. That philosophical difference determines everything from daily preparation to playoff performance under pressure. I've been connecting the dots across multiple platforms, and the pattern is undeniable. Angel Reese's absence represents more than missed games. It represents the difference between championship culture and talent collection without accountability. The social media temperature suggests fans are ready to move beyond injury sympathy toward accountability demands. When your fan base starts questioning commitment rather than expressing concern for health, that represents a fundamental shift in narrative perception. Chicago's reputation among players, according to social media analysis, reflects these cultural problems. Organizations with weak accountability standards struggle to attract and retain elite talent because competitive players want to be part of winning cultures, not excuse-making environments. Looking ahead, this story has all the elements for continued viral engagement: mystery around player commitment, organizational dysfunction, competitive imbalance, and accountability questions that resonate beyond basketball. The angle nobody's covering is how this absence pattern predicts future roster decisions and coaching changes. Content creators focusing on individual statistics miss the broader storyline about character-based team building versus talent collection. The emergence of role-player celebration content reflects fan appetite for authentic competitive spirit over manufactured star power. Angel Reese's absence creates opportunities for content that examines organizational philosophy, accountability standards, and the cultural differences that determine championship viability. That's the narrative territory that drives engagement among sophisticated basketball analysts. After filtering through the noise and following the digital breadcrumbs, here's what the evidence reveals. Angel Reese's 5-game absence pattern exposes fundamental problems with Chicago's organizational culture, accountability standards, and competitive philosophy. The timing of her disappearance during the biggest rivalry game, combined with her availability for all-star activities, suggests individual choice rather than medical necessity. That choice reflects poorly on both personal accountability and organizational standards. The contrast with Indiana's character-first approach becomes more obvious every game. While Chicago makes excuses for absent stars, Indiana builds depth through human connection. While Chicago's talent disappears during pressure moments, Indiana's role players deliver historic performances. The social media signals indicate this narrative shift is permanent. Fans are moving from injury sympathy to accountability demands, and that change in perception affects everything from ticket sales to free agent recruitment. We're just scratching the surface of what this organizational dysfunction means for Chicago's future. The next section reveals why this absence might predict major changes coming to the Sky's front office. Chicago stands at a crossroads that will determine their competitive future for years to come. Angel Reese's absence pattern forces them to choose between enabling individual entitlement or establishing organizational accountability standards that apply to everyone. If they continue making excuses for absent stars, they establish a precedent that undermines coaching authority and team chemistry. If they demand accountability, they risk conflict with their highest-profile player during contract negotiations. Indiana faced similar decisions when building their current culture. They chose character over talent collection, accountability over individual accommodation, and sustainable systems over short-term star power. The results speak for themselves: consistent competitive excellence regardless of individual player availability. The competitive intelligence suggests Chicago lacks the organizational strength to make difficult decisions about accountability. Their pattern of excuse-making, rather than standard setting, indicates a franchise more concerned with public relations than championship building. Tyler Marsh's changing explanations for Angel Reese's absence create credibility problems that extend beyond this single situation. When coaches can't provide consistent information about player availability, it suggests either poor communication with players or willingness to mislead media and fans. Compare that to Indiana's approach, where Stephanie White delivers clear, consistent messaging about team philosophy, player development, and organizational standards. Her credibility comes from authenticity rather than excuse-making. The social media analysis shows fans losing confidence in Chicago's coaching and front office management. Reddit comments like, "This was a coaching disaster class," reflect growing criticism of organizational leadership across all levels. Coaching credibility affects everything from player respect to media coverage to fan engagement. Once coaches lose credibility through inconsistent messaging, rebuilding that trust requires significant time and consistent behavior change. Angel Reese's absence provides Indiana with psychological advantages that extend beyond this single game. They now know their biggest rival's star player will disappear during pressure moments, which affects game planning, roster construction, and competitive confidence. Boston's dominance over Cardoso becomes even more devastating when Chicago's other star won't even show up for support. The psychological warfare element creates compound effects where Indiana's confidence grows while Chicago's belief system deteriorates. Competitive psychology matters enormously in rivalry situations. When one team knows the other team's stars won't appear for crucial games, it affects preparation intensity, in-game aggression, and long-term competitive respect. The reputation damage from this absence pattern affects Chicago's ability to recruit free agents, trade for elite players, and maintain competitive credibility across the league. Professional athletes want to play for organizations that demand excellence from everyone. The fundamental difference between these organizations comes down to their approach to human character versus individual talent. Indiana builds sustainable success through character-first roster construction and accountability standards that apply to everyone. Chicago collects talent without establishing cultural foundations that support competitive excellence under pressure. Angel Reese's absence pattern exemplifies this philosophical weakness because individual entitlement undermines team accountability. Championship organizations understand that talent without character creates fragile competitive foundations. When pressure increases, character determines performance more than skill level. Indiana proves this principle while Chicago demonstrates its absence. The organizational philosophy divide explains why this rivalry isn't competitive despite similar talent levels. Character-based teams create depth and resilience, while talent collection teams depend on individual performance without systematic support. This philosophical divide is exactly why Indiana keeps dominating Chicago, regardless of roster changes. The final section reveals what this means for both franchises' championship windows. Looking at championship viability through the lens of organizational culture rather than individual talent, Indiana's window is expanding while Chicago's is closing. Character-based depth creates sustainable competitive advantage that improves over time. Chicago's reliance on individual talent without cultural foundation makes their championship window dependent on perfect health and commitment from stars who have proven unreliable during pressure moments. That's not sustainable championship strategy. The role player development happening in Indiana creates multiple pathways to success regardless of individual player availability. Hull's breakout performance, Boston's defensive dominance, and Mitchell's leadership evolution all represent systematic player development rather than accidental improvement. Chicago's inability to develop similar depth through cultural investment means they remain vulnerable to exactly this type of situation, where star absence cripples competitive capability. Championship teams overcome individual absences through systematic strength. The temperature of the online conversation has shifted permanently regarding Angel Reese's commitment and Chicago's accountability standards. Fan engagement metrics show growing criticism rather than injury sympathy, indicating narrative perception has changed. Reddit analysis reveals fans connecting dots between Reese's absence pattern and her historical tendency to leave situations when pressure increases. That pattern recognition affects how fans interpret future absences and organizational decisions. YouTube content creators are capitalizing on this narrative shift with titles suggesting Reese quit on Chicago similar to previous situations. The engagement numbers indicate audience appetite for accountability-focused rather than excuse-making content. Social media verdict reflects broader cultural shifts toward demanding accountability from elite athletes rather than accepting excuse-making for convenient absences during crucial moments. Based on competitive intelligence analysis and social media temperature mapping, several predictions emerge about both franchises' trajectories. Chicago will face increasing pressure to establish accountability standards or risk losing credibility with fans, media, and potential recruits. Angel Reese's absence pattern forces organizational decisions about cultural foundations. Indiana's character-first approach will continue producing role-player breakthroughs and systematic improvement that maintains competitive advantage regardless of individual roster changes. Their cultural foundation creates sustainable excellence. The rivalry will become increasingly one-sided unless Chicago makes fundamental changes to organizational philosophy and accountability standards. Talent collection without character development cannot compete against systematic cultural strength. Angel Reese's future with Chicago depends on whether the organization demands accountability or continues enabling entitlement. That decision determines both her individual trajectory and franchise competitive viability. After connecting all the digital breadcrumbs and analyzing the social media signals, Angel Reese's 5-game absence pattern exposes fundamental problems that extend far beyond individual injury management. This represents organizational dysfunction disguised as medical necessity. The timing, the changing explanations, and the historical pattern all point toward individual choice rather than legitimate medical issues. That choice reflects both personal accountability problems and organizational weakness in establishing standards. Chicago's future depends on whether they learn from Indiana's character-first approach or continue enabling individual entitlement that undermines team accountability. The competitive gap will only increase without fundamental cultural changes. The social media verdict is clear. Fans are demanding accountability rather than accepting excuses. That pressure will force organizational decisions that determine Chicago's competitive future and Angel Reese's career trajectory. What do you think about Angel Reese's absence pattern? Are we looking at legitimate injury management or organizational dysfunction? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this community's analysis has been incredible throughout this investigation. If you found value in this investigative breakdown, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because organizational dysfunction stories like this develop rapidly, and you don't want to miss the next chapter. Share this with anyone who needs to understand what's really happening in Chicago, because mainstream sports media won't investigate these organizational culture problems. The community needs to know the truth. Thanks for joining this investigation into what Angel Reese's absence really reveals about the Chicago Sky's organizational problems. Until next time, keep connecting the dots.